On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC Vegas 120 main event taking place August 8th at the Meta Apex between Mateusz Gamrot and Quillan Salkilld. My name is James Lynch. If you've never watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats and intangibles. Then at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my prediction for this fight. Let me know in the comments after you're done watching this video what your prediction is for the fight. I don't just want to pick. I want to hear how you think this fight plays out. Interesting one here, veteran versus prospect, so to speak, in the lightweight division. And of course, this is a 5-round fight at the Apex. Let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two. You can see Gamrot, 26-4 record, 12-1 for Salkilld, 35-26, so big age gap here, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, 70.5 to 75. So Quillan going to be much younger here, also going to have a height and reach advantage in this fight. But let's start first with Mateusz Gamrot, the Polish fighter, coming into this one. And again, another big fight for him as he looks to move up in the lightweight rankings here. So Gamrot, I mentioned it there, 26-4 record. He's also got a no contest. He's got 8 knockouts, 6 submissions, and 12 decisions. He's currently ranked number 6 in the meta rankings and number 8 in the media rankings. Like I mentioned, 35 years old, 5'10" with a 70.5-inch reach. He's got performance of the night 2 times against Scott Holtzman and Jeremy Stephens, which were, interestingly enough, his first 2 UFC fights, or early fights, I should say. He's also got fight of the night 3 times against Guram Kutateladze, Arman Tsarukyan, and Dan Hooker. He's also got the fastest submission by Kimura in UFC history, 65 seconds against Jeremy Stephens. Gamrot did not have an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros back in February of 2012, made his UFC debut after a pretty nice run in KSW back in October of 2020. And if you look at it there, he is 9-4 in the UFC. He's got 5 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include Arman Tsarukyan, Jalen Turner, Rafael Fiziev, and Rafael dos Anjos. His notable losses include Beneil Dariush, Dan Hooker, and most recently Charles Oliveira. Hasn't had any major layoffs in his career or any major injuries. He has had a bunch of close fights. Let's go through some of these because this does give a bit of context to Gamrot's UFC career. So the Guram fight, he lost that by split decision. You might be thinking, oh, maybe that was a bad decision. It's not. If you go look at the media scorecards over on MMADecisions.com, that's where you can find all the media scorecards. Again, this isn't the be-all end-all, but it is kind of giving some context to the fight. And you'll see that the majority of media did think that Guram won that fight if you go look at it there. So by my count, this is taking a second to load here, you'll see about 14 media members scored the fight for Guram, just 3 scoring it for Gamrot there. The one that people thought should have gone the other way was actually the Arman Tsarukyan fight. That was back at UFC on ESPN 38 back in June of 2022. And if you look at it there, Gamrot defeats Tsarukyan. Most of the media thought that Arman Tsarukyan won that fight. I remember watching that thinking, yeah, Arman's got this, and then they ended up giving it to Gamrot. So my counting's correct here. 15 media members here for Arman, 7 for Gamrot. And then there's a couple other close fights. I'm not going to go in super big detail on this one. The Jalen Turner fight, a lot of people felt like Turner maybe deserved to win that fight. That was a split decision win for Gamrot back at UFC 285. Only 3 media members scored the fight for Turner. 23 scored it for Gamrot. And then the Dan Hooker fight, where he ended up losing, Gamrot did. Actually, more media members felt like Gamrot won that. Just close, though. That was at UFC 305 back in August of 2024. 9 media members scored the fight for Gamrot, just 8 scoring it for Hooker. So again, that's a fight that maybe should have gone the other way. Let's go look at Gamrot's stats. Significant strikes landed per minute is 3.21, kind of an average. That one there. Striking accuracy is at 51%. His striking defense is at 60%. Not bad. Doesn't get hit too much. Takedown average is 5.22. His takedown accuracy is only at 38%, and his takedown defense is at 83%. So that'll certainly be put to the test. Although saying that, Charles Oliveira was able to get a couple takedowns, or he got 1 takedown in the fight and ended up being the one that got him the win there. So that's everything you need to know about Mateusz Gamrot. Let's go have a quick look at his opponent, Quillan Salkilld, one of the hot prospects in the UFC's lightweight division. So you can see it there, 12-1 record. He's got 5 knockouts, 4 submissions, and 3 decisions. He's currently ranked number 8 in the meta rankings and number 12 in the media rankings. So a bit of a disparity there. He's 26 years old, like I mentioned. He is 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach. So he's 9 years younger and will have a 2-inch height and 4.5-inch reach advantage. He's already got performance of the night bonuses in 4 of his fights, including the ones against Jubilee, Nasrat Hakparas, Jamie Malarkey, and Beneil Dariush. He's got the second fastest knockout in UFC history. Second fastest knockout victory by debuting UFC lightweight when he finished Jubilee in 19 seconds. Remember, there's a lot of hype on Jubilee in that fight, and he ends up getting finished in 19 seconds. He made his amateur debut, just to show you the experience gap here, okay? Because I think this is important. So Salkilld made his amateur debut way back in September of 2018. By that point, Gamrot already had 14 pro fights. It's not including his amateur fights. So again, Gamrot had 14 pro fights there. He made his mixed martial arts debut, his pro debut in February of 2021, which is interesting. He lost his pro debut and then he lost his amateur debut as well. So it just goes to show, kids, don't give up if it doesn't go well in the first fight. So that pro debut was February of 2021. By that point, Gamrot had 18 professional fights. And then by the time that Salkilld made his UFC debut, which was the Jubilee fight back in February of 2025, Gamrot had 10 UFC fights. So again, huge disparity in the experience there. Discrepancy, I should say. I don't know why I'm saying disparity. That doesn't even mean anything. So I mentioned it there. Salkilld is 5-0 in the UFC. He's got 4 stoppage victories. He's only got one notable win, and that is Beneil Dariush. Maybe you could talk about Haqparast, but Haqparast is not really, I don't think he's ever been ranked, although he has been in the UFC for a while. And we could also throw in Gage Young as maybe a notable win, although Gage isn't ranked either, but he did defeat him on Contender Series, and Gage Young has done quite well since losing that fight. He hasn't had any major layoffs or any close fights, really. And if we look at his stats, they're a little bit higher, but part of that is because he's had less fights than Gamrot too. So the significant strikes landed per minute is 5.01. His striking accuracy is at 57%. Striking defense is at 45%. That is a bit concerning. Now, if he was fighting maybe a different fighter, like say like a Fiziev or Gaethje or someone like that, although he wouldn't be fighting anyone like that, I think that early in his career, well, maybe Fiziev, but that would be a bit concerning. That is a number that does, strike you quite well. His takedown average is 7.25, so he does get a lot of takedowns. His takedown accuracy is at 35%. His takedown defense is at 80%, and his sub-average is 0.8. Now, unfortunately, at the time I'm doing this, there are no odds on this fight, so I'm not really sure which way the odds are going to go. If I had to guess, I think Quillan is going to be the betting favorite. And this would sort of lead me to believe that, because if you look at the Tapology picks, they do have Quillan as the favorite here at 54%. So most people picking him by KO TKO at 74.9%, just 2.4% picking him by submission, and 22.7% picking him by decision. Again, this is a 5-round fight, so new territory here for Quillan in this fight. And 46% picking Gamrot, 84.2% picking him by decision, 14.4% picking him by submission, and 1.4% picking him by KO TKO. And if we go look at our AI predictor, which is over at Fight Signal, and again, I've done videos using this AI software before, they actually favor Quillan a lot more here, 66.24% compared to 33.76%. So they really like him here. So what is my pick on this fight? This is a tough one. I mean, we've seen a number of examples this year where the up-and-comer does not get the win over the veteran, right? You can look at Yusuf all over Sterling. Now, granted, that's a bit more of a high-level fight, but that's one that comes to mind. Manuel Torres, I should say, against Fiziev. That was another one where we saw him, too much of a step up here. So we have seen examples of where maybe it's too much too soon. Normally in a situation like this, I would take the veteran here in Gamrot, just because there really hasn't been, it doesn't really look like he's lost a step that much in some of his losses. And again, like the Hooker fight, I mentioned that's one that he should have got, but I'll save you the suspense here. I'm going to go with Quillan Salkilld in this fight. And this is a rare time, and it might bite me because it's bit me before earlier this year when I've kind of picked this way. But I'm kind of betting on potential here. I'm betting on the eye test, and that's never the greatest way to pick fights, but there's something with him that does look a little bit extra and a little bit interesting as far as his skill set here. And so I'm kind of banking on that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fully aware. I'm kind of taking a shot in the dark here. He might end up being the betting favorite here. So maybe I am picking with the public, but I think you got to be a little bit impressed with what he's done, right? You're only as good as the opposition you fight. The opposition hasn't been great. I mean, I will point out Beneil Dariush has been finished in the first round. I don't know how many times. It's been a lot. He's kind of on the tail end of his career. He's on the tail end of retirement. I remember when this fight got booked, everyone pretty much knew it was going to be Salkilld by first round finish. So that's his best win, and that doesn't give us a whole lot. And some of these other wins here, Yanel, Jubilee, I don't even think he's fought since that fight, right? He's been out for a very long time, since 2025. Nasrat's barely fought. Malarkey's kind of holding on to his job. So the opposition isn't great. And even prior to getting in the UFC, not the best opposition overall. So it's a bit of a risk from that standpoint. But the reason I like him is for a couple of reasons. So first I should say how I'm picking this. I'm going to take him by submission. And I'm going to take him by submission in the third round. And I think what it's going to boil down to is I think Quillan is going to be faster. I think he's going to hit a lot harder than what Gamrot's sort of used to in certain fights. And I think he rises to the occasion here. And I think this is by design. I think it's been very interesting, the matchmaking that the UFC's done for Quillan so far in his career. I think he's had, let's call it like it is, I think he's had a pretty easy schedule. in the UFC so far. And I think they like him. And I think they're giving him this main event spot because they don't like Gamrot. I think it's been kind of known. Remember, Gamrot was the guy that was a backup for Islam and Oliveira. Oliveira pulls out and they take Volkanovski on short notice over Gamrot. Gamrot's been pretty vocal about how the UFC is not super fond of him because he doesn't finish a lot of his fights. I think if the UFC had it their way, and I'm not implying fight fixing or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. But there are times when the UFC has a certain fighter they want to win. They want the 26-year-old from, Aussie to win, not the, 35-year-old Polish fighter. So I think that's something we do need to take note of, is that the UFC would like probably Quillan to win this fight. And I think maybe they see something that we don't know about Quillan that could potentially get this fight done. Now, one thing I should point out too, and before I say this, let me just point out that I don't think Quillan is by any means on anywhere near the level that Charles Oliveira is, but I can't help but look at that Oliveira fight just a couple fights ago. And I think Gamrot actually outstruck him in that fight, but Oliveira looked really good and kind of in control in that fight. And for Oliveira to finish Gamrot so early, it kind of made me think like, man, Gamrot is not a contender anymore. And granted, we're talking about Oliveira, who very well could go out there and win the title again with Gaethje being champ. Certainly possible. And I don't think Oliveira is on the same level as Quillan. I just want to point that out. But it made me sort of realize that I don't think Gamrot's a contender anymore. You look at his last couple wins. Robievic's not a guy who's made much noise. Klein's kind of been hovering around the rankings. I think at one point he was ranked 15. Dos Anjos, a little bit older. Fiziev was a leg injury, right? I think that fight was fairly even. If you go look at Fiziev and Gamrot in their fight, I want to say that it was quite even before the finish. In fact, Fiziev actually outlanded him, and he hurt his knee in that fight. So I don't think you can really count that as like a quality win for him. Jalen Turner was a split decision win. Again, I thought he won that fight, but is Turner a contender? I don't know. So I guess, the wins that he has had are a little bit deceiving. So that's something that is willing to point out. Now, I mentioned the 45% striking defense for Quillan. I'm a bit worried about that, but he's fighting a guy in Gamrot who, if you look at the striking output, it's not really that high, 3.21. So I'm not really worried about that. Again, if it was a Fiziev or someone that's more known as a striker, I would be a little bit more worried about that. The other thing we got to point out, this is at the Apex. It's going to be a smaller cage. I think that favors a guy like Quillan, who finishes pretty much all of his opponents. The only fight he's had that's gone the distance is Yanel, right? So I think this is an opportunity here for Quillan to move up. I could see a point where his lack of good opposition does catch up to him. Like, for example, I could see him beating Gamrot and then maybe getting another step up after this and fighting like someone more notable or someone like a little bit more of a threat, just trying to think of an example right now, even looking at the rankings here. Like I could see him losing at some point, but I think this is a fight where, and let's also, the age as well. We know that fighters over 35 tend to not do so well in the lighter weight classes as well. So I think that, again, the 9-year age gap, I think that certainly favors him. But even looking at the rankings right now, like if we look at I guess Gamrot's ranked 6, but if he fought a Benoit Saint-Denis, for example, I could see Quillan possibly losing that fight if it was just a striker versus striker, because I do worry about that 45% striking defense. And I think a guy like Saint-Denis could potentially take him out here. So, but I do think this is a fight where Quillan can look good and will look good and rise to the occasion and get it done. And I know it's a bit of a guess here as far as, betting on potential, but I do think he gets it done. So yeah, I'm going Quillan Salkilld. I think this is the fight where he, gets that big win and performs well and gets a finish. And then we start talking about him, making a run here at lightweight. So that's going to be my pick. So let me know your thoughts in the comments as far as your prediction for this fight. Which way you lean in on this one? Who do you think gets it done? Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, at Lynch on Sports. This is Early Look. This is where I preview the upcoming notable fights that are going on in the UFC. Let me know if there's any fights you guys want me to preview. Of course, I do, a good amount of the main events, obviously the title fights, kind of the bigger fights, all that. But let me know if you guys have any suggestions for fights you want me to break down. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.